Hi there, folks. Sean Falconer here from Modern Athlete Magazine. Welcome to our latest installment of our MA Live series brought to you by Traumeel. And these are all about teaching you how to run better and improve your running experience. Today, we're joined by one of our leading coaches in the country, Grant Johnson, formerly from Gauteng, but actually now based in the Cape, but still linked to Gauteng athletes and clubs. So, Grant, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
First things first, I just want to find out a bit more about you and for the benefit of our viewers, and tell us about your background. I was reading that you've been running and cycling and doing multi-sport for about 30 odd years. You've got personal bests of 34 minutes for 10Ks and a 2:37 marathon. That's pretty damn fast by anybody's standards. You've also represented South Africa at the World Champs in both duathlon and triathlon. So I would imagine in your sporting career, you've got quite some highlights to look back on.
Yes, I do. It was an interesting start. So obviously I started off as a runner and doing cross country at school, and I actually injured my back when I was 19, and hence why I actually started picking up the multi-sport, switched over to cycling and swimming, and then I thought I'd give one of those NJ triathlons a try, and it's got me strong enough to, first of all, compete at World Champs, and on top of that, get back into my running again.
In terms of coaching, I see that you've obviously developed into that field later in your career, because you've been coaching for about 5 years now. I would also imagine that thanks to your competitive career across multiple disciplines, you would bring a lot of experience and knowledge into the job. So what type of athlete do you work with?
I work with all types of athletes, so even from a couch potato to running your first 5K to your 10K. The majority of my athletes that I've picked up have been people wanting to improve on their current running. So moving from, let's say, like a 60 minutes, 10 kilometer to say a 50, well, breaking 60 minutes for their 10Ks, and then obviously going up to the comrades distance.
Okay. Well, that's quite a wide spectrum then. So the focus of today's MA Live is on time trials. I've been running myself for close on 30 years now. Actually, I need to do my mental arithmetic. I think it's just under 30. So I've done quite a few time trials over the years, but I'd like to get a coach's input on the sort of the real technicalities of it. So let's get into that now. The first question in my mind is, what is the ideal distance for a time trial? And I ask this because I've seen that quite a few of the Gauteng clubs offer an 8-kilometer time trial, but most of the clubs down here in the Cape offer 5-kilometer time trials.
So I also think time trials, okay, if we had to look at from a Gauteng perspective, one would look at the 4K distance more for your shorter distance running, or where you are if you're in the early stages of your training. So I would, for example, with my athletes, to ask them to focus on the 4-kilometer, where their goal distance is maybe 5 to 15 Ks, maybe up to 21 kilometers. Whereas if it's 21 and above, or at the later stages, in terms of their goal races, I'd put them towards the 8-kilometer.
Okay.
Now, obviously with Cape Town's offering of the 5-kilometer distance, I see that as more a sense of it comes down to, first of all, time to compete or to actually do the time trial, and also on the situation or the location of the time trial. So if there's a lot of traffic in the area, it's very difficult to get people to come and do an 8-kilometer, for example, if it's going to mean repeating parts of a route or not having the distance of 8 kilometers. So where you've got your 5-kilometer offering, it's kind of middle ground between your 4 and your 8. And obviously in alignment with the likes of your park runs.
Okay, makes sense. So when you explain to an athlete the reason to run time trials, what do you tell them? I assume it centers around measuring your fitness and endurance and seeing where an athlete is in their training. but I think it might also involve the benefits of speed work. So on that, on a related note, can you also explain why athletes need to do speed work as part of their training program?
So, look, at the end of the day, if you want to stay in the current position that you're in, if you don't incorporate speed work into your training, you aren't going to improve. So obviously, time trials or speed work in general, you do get benefits from doing speed work. So obviously, it's a matter of determining, do you have any weaknesses, or in general, it's just improving your fitness and improving the elasticity of your muscles, and just making sure that everything works as, first of all, as you would expect it to, and not end up just going to do a race where you're going to push yourself and then you end up being injured. So it's more preparation of your body in terms of building up your muscular strength, or your even your connectivity, your connective tissue, in order to limit the amount of injury going forward.
Okay, so that's the principle of speed work per se. So now in terms
Yes.
of time trials and that whole measuring how's your training going? Where are you at? How does that fit into it?
So your speed work, especially your shorter stuff, you would look at potentially going to basically red lines. In other words, pushing yourself to a maximum. Whereas with time trials, you don't push yourself as hard. It's more a matter of trying to maintain your pace or your time over that longer period of time. So it simulates your physical races. Whereas if you are doing, for example, 200-meter sprints, you're going to go full out, which is, unless you are doing short distance track, that's not a likely situation that you're actually going to experience. So it's more a matter of putting you into a situation where it's what's going to happen when it comes down to race day.
So one of the things that I sort of did early in my running career was I would run a time trial quite often. It was sort of almost part of my training program. It was my speed work. Is that I think that's another way of doing it. Do you agree? I mean, you don't want to race every single time trial, but it's almost, it gives you a speed work session every week.
Correct, yes. So it also depends in terms of, a lot of people, I've noticed a lot of people don't like doing speed work on their own. So that whole time trial gives you a perspective of, first of all, training with other people or doing speed with other people, and also competing against people that, for example, aren't necessarily part of your running club, if you do belong to a running club.
Okay. So now let's talk strategy.
Yes.
You're simulating a race scenario by running a time trial, but do you think the whole point is to literally go flat out the whole way like a race, or is it more about using time trials to step things up in terms of your speed and working on a progressive increase in pace?
So I see it as a progressive increase. But so look, if you are new to running, especially, or if you're new to, if you're looking to do a faster time, which is a lot faster than kind of what you're used to, a time trial helps you. For example, your first one, you're going to go and do it. You're going to push it hard from the beginning, and you're going to end up blowing. So a time trial is also, as I said, it mimics a running race. So you don't want to blow, let's say, for example, 1 kilometer from the finish, because then that just ruins your whole goal in terms of the actual training or the time trial. So it's slightly backing off, and the goal more is a matter of, when you're doing your first couple especially, you're going to start off a bit slower, and you want to be able to finish strong. So you want to be able to mimic pushing at the finish line and overtaking that person who was just in front of you.
Well, I can tell you from horrible experience, having hit the wall many a time in my club time trial in Stellenbosch. We have a 3 kilometer loop and a 2 kilometer loop, and you can do numerals of 3, 2, 4, 5, 6, 8, whatever you want to do, depends on how many loops you run. And let's just say that it's not a completely flat course, it's relatively, but there are 1 or 2 little pulls. And when you start too fast, yeah, the wheels come off and you end up having to walk in a flipping 3-kilometer loop, which is a bit embarrassing, but okay, I'm getting old. I'm going to claim that. So, and the worst part is the last little section is a slight incline. So now you want to gun it for the last sort of 400 meters, and you suddenly realize, wait, I'm going uphill and I've got nothing in the tank. So yeah, it definitely, I can hear what you're saying about having strategy and treating it like a race.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, you want to say?
So in conjunction with that, so for example, that's a great example, your Stellenbosch time trial. If you say, for example, the guy in front of you is going to do a 3-kilometer and you want to push with him from the start, and let's say you want to do 5 or 8 kilometers, you're going to end up walking or cutting your time trial short.
Speak from experience.
Exactly.
Yeah. The saving grace is that, as I'm talking about the Helderberg Harriers time trial in Stellenbosch, and the saving grace is that due to the slight differences in the lengths of the loops, you don't literally all line up at the same spot. There's a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5, a 6-kilometer mark. They're very close together, but you can tell, okay, he's doing a 6 and I'm doing a 3, so don't try and race him, or vice versa. But it happens. Testosterone kicks in.
Okay. But obviously, with the scenario where the karting clubs have the 4 and the 8-kilometer, that you're going to end up doing that sort of thing.
Yeah, I can well imagine. Sorry, one last story from me is I came up to Gauteng once for business early in my modern athlete career, and a bunch of the clubs in that Bedford View, Edenvale area, Jeppe in that area, they were all doing sort of inter-club time trials. And I went and lined up for one of these 5Ks thinking, well, I ran a very, very fast 5K in Cape Town just last week at our club time trial, so I should be okay. And there I went. Halfway, I realized, A, I'm running at altitude, and B, this is not a flat course at all.
Exactly.
And there was the editor of Modern Athlete having a nice walk halfway through a 5K time trial. Never mind, enough said. Okay. How often do you advise runners to participate in time trials? Because obviously you can do once a week, you can do every second week, you can do once a month. I would imagine this depends on what you're trying to get out of the time trial.
So I would also look at the distances that you're doing. So for example, from a Gauteng perspective, let's say the second week of the month, you want to do a 4-kilometer, and then at the end of the month, you want to do an 8-kilometer. So similarly with the Cape Town perspective, I would suggest that every 2 weeks you go and push a time trial. More from a matter of you want variety in your training. So unless you've got multiple time trials that you can go and do, then from a weekly perspective, that wouldn't be an issue.
And if somebody wanted to use the time trial as a real pace measurement every 2 weeks, but then in between run the time trial as a speed session, do you think that's good?
It would be a good indication, because also it works, it kind of shows you how you perform on your own. So are you improving on your own, first of all, and how you work better in terms of having people there or running with people.
Yeah.
Because ideally, if you are doing your own time trial, that's actually the best scenario in terms of improvements. But as I said, most people don't like doing speed work on their own. And then the advantage of doing a club time trial, for example, is you've got people to help push yourself.
Yeah. Okay. What do you tell an athlete who does a time trial and is disappointed with their result? For example, you've got new runners who they are constantly getting faster and fitter, and then eventually they hit the plateau. Or you've got somebody that's putting in some serious training for an event and they're just expecting to go faster at their next time trial, and it doesn't happen.
Yeah. So obviously I need to make their expectations, I need to manage the expectations in terms of so first of all, where are you in your training block? Because if you've recently pushed up the mileage and let's say you're not adjusting accordingly, then maybe you need a week off in terms of going to do the time trial again. So there's a lot of influencing factors here, because, for example, it could be because most of the time trials happen around lunchtime. I mean, in the evenings, it's a matter of what did I eat differently and how
Am I
my
tired
sleep
after work?
patterns,
Yeah.
exactly. Do you have other influencing factors with your family or huge deadlines with work?
Yeah.
So also what I've noticed is a few of the Gauteng clubs that I know of have actually moved their time trials to the mornings, maybe to get more of their club members to actually come and take part. But then they are still having the afternoon one as well. But I found that the morning ones are actually better attended and could be better in terms of having more people to kind of compete with in the same time range or within your goals.
I would imagine that also running a time trial in the morning is actually far more similar to race scenario than an evening time trial. So that's, I would think, also plays a role in that.
Yes, correct.
Yeah. No. Club time trials can also be quite sociable get-togethers as well. Now, you mentioned earlier about people not wanting to do speed work alone and wanting other people to not necessarily race, but they can push each other to faster times. So I've also seen that quite a lot of people will come to a time trial and they'll have a nice chat afterwards, or a cold one in the clubhouse if the clubhouse has a bar. Do you think that group environment and social side of things helps athletes when it comes to running time trials and working on their speed?
I would say yes, from a perspective of motivating them to come and meet friends, meet new people, and obviously in terms of getting them there. However, I've noticed since COVID that a lot of people seem to be more family focused, and I think that's also why there's been that introduction of the time trials in the mornings. But overall, time trials are a great way to socialize, but it also, as I said, depends on how many people attend the time trials and obviously the location of the time trials. Because if you've got, let's say, for example, you go and do the time trial in Strand and you need to be at the office in Cape Town CBD, it's going to be very difficult for you to kind of fit both in. So I've noticed that because people are kind of focusing more on their families, they would rather rush home and not necessarily go and do the time trial. So I think the numbers might be dwindling a bit from that perspective. But on top of that, I would say if the club is doing their time trials in the morning, there's still that social aspect to it. However, it's not really having a drink afterwards. So a lot of clubs, for example, Bedford View Athletics Club, they run to the location of the time trial. So they're socializing on the way there. Then they do the time trial. Then they socialize on the way back. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, I suppose you can also replace a drink afterwards with a coffee. So
exactly.
Yeah. Now, my last question for you is: I see you've got a very, very speedy personal best of 16 minutes 24 for 5 kilometers. Out of interest, was that in an official race, or did you time somewhere, or was that in a time trial?
So it wasn't in an official club time trial. It's more a time trial that some friends and I put together. So it's people of similar pace that we just go and smash out a route, and that's where I managed to get that from.
Okay. Well, I think the best I ever achieved on a 5 kilometer time trial was 20 minutes and about 40 seconds, which I don't think is too bad considering I'm only about 4 foot tall and I've got very short legs. So I'm claiming it.
And so you should.
Thank you. Now, Grant, if anybody wants to get hold of you and chat more or make use of your services, how do they go about doing that?
They can go to my website, which is www.paste2performance.co.za/WP.
Is that backslash or forward slash? Just out of interest.
Sorry, forward slash.
Okay.
Sorry, my apologies.
Right. And that's paste, PACED, the number 2 performance, paste2performance.co.za/WP.
That's correct, yes.
Cool. No, thank you. Well, now that you're based in the Cape, I'm sure I'll be seeing you at more races. So thanks for the chat and all the best for the coaching.
Thank you very much.
Cool. Now, folks, as I said at the beginning, these are our MA live sessions brought to you by Traumeel. These are the Learn to Run Well sessions, as we call them. So I hope you've gleaned some interesting information and some helpful information, which you can take into your own running. I know that I'll be lining up at a time trial again soon, because after my long COVID of last year, I'm starting to build up my fitness. And I've also got my club mates of Helderberg Harriers and Stellenbosch sending me WhatsApps going, "We haven't seen you for a while, Mr. Falconer." So I'm getting a bit of peer pressure to pitch up at the time trial soon. Grant, thank you very much for your time, and we'll chat again soon.
Thanks, Sean.